everyone, welcome to Briar Haus Writes. I'm Becky Parker, and today it is my honor to be able to have poet, Western humorist, and MC. She's been honoring the world for over 20 years with her beautiful work, Miss Doris Daley. Doris, welcome to our program.
Well, I am very, very happy to be here.
Doris, tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you get involved with wanting to have writing and storytelling?
I'm a ranch girl. I grew up in a very rural part of southern Alberta in the foothills. And just as every family that's involved with banking or hardware stores or grocery stores or university or schools, kids grow up to have interests. Same
Right.
with ranchers' kids. And so some are natural athletes, some naturally want to be a cowboy, some are natural musicians. And I was the kid in our little ranching community who always had a ear for a musical sounding word and I just my own sense of my own delight was ignited by rhyming words. So as a young girl growing up on a ranch in a town of 300 people, very
Oh, wow.
small, I look back when I was young, Becky, we didn't have a term like it takes a village to raise a child. We just did it. That's just how it worked back in those days. So wasn't I lucky that the whole town knew all the kids? And so um, if you needed a skit for a 50th birthday party or a poem for a wedding anniversary, the neighbors just said, well, call Wallace and Melva. Their daughter likes to write. She'll write you a song or a poem. Now, it was very childish, but it was full of exuberance. And so my early interest in language and language arts was well supported by my friends and family and my town.
And so, how did you get to go from writing for your family and your friends and all of that? How did you become doing this publicly? What led you to that?
uh, my cheap frugal nature led me to that. My I grew up. I left the ranch. I got an education. I traveled the world. I had a job. I came back to my home province of Alberta. And while I had been gone chasing my career around the world, something called a cowboy poetry gathering had sprung up in the little town just over the hill from us. And it was probably 1990. And gosh, I don't want to give you too much history, but in 1985, cowboy poetry enjoyed its rebirth in the town of Elko, Nevada. And next month, in January 2025, it'll be the 40th anniversary of the National Cowboy Poetry Symposium in the United States. Well,
Okay.
it was such a hit, and cowboys and rural folk back in the late 1980s said, oh, this is so much fun. And my neighbor writes, let's put on a gathering at our town.
Oh,
Well, now I had arrived back home, and my brother, who is a sister-in-law too, talented with cowboy crafts, horsehair hitching, they had a booth at the cowboy festival. And I said, oh, I'd love to go. Get me a ticket. And Mark said, no, no, if anybody in our family can write, you've been writing all your life, just write a poem that has a Western twist, a punchline, and come and be on the show.
oh,
Oh,
wow.
I couldn't do that, I said, because I was reserved and shy and I'd never been to this event. But then he said the magic words, which were, well, you suit yourself, but anybody who recites a poem, they get the $25 dance ticket for free. So, so suddenly I was very motivated, and I wrote a poem with a Western twist. You losing a scrap of paper in a junky chore truck on the ranch, and I had such a good time at that first gathering, listening, not performing, but listening to people tell their old stories, that I said to myself, oh, if I write two or three more poems this year, I can get invited back and listen, and more and more and more. Because what really drew me to the cowboy poetry gatherings was were the songs and the stories and the poems of the old timers. And my ticket to always get on the program was to keep adding to my own repertoire.
And how did it feel when you got up there for the first time?
I
What
felt
was
like
it like?
uh, vomitous. Now, a nervous wreck, it's one thing to walk the dog, to walk around town 10 times and have your memory, your poem completely put to memory. But when you get up in front of a group of people, it's a whole other thing. And now I'll fast forward, Becky, and say that I find myself now in a world where there's two parts to what I do. There's poetry that is on the page, that is me at home writing what I hoped, crafting and enjoying the wordsmithing. And in the world of cowboy poetry, I've learned there's a whole other skill, which is being on stage and presenting it orally. We don't You don't really shuffle up to a mic with book in hand and read and going up and down. No. It's all memorized and recited. So that's the second, and I've stumbled into that world, but that's the second skill set I had to learn.
Was that difficult for you to be able
Um,
to get both of those skill sets?
people, well, I work at both. And so the first time I was invited to Elko, Nevada, the big show, um, boy, it was such a gift to me to be invited there because I could see in others what I didn't want to do, and I could see in others what I did want to do. And I came home thinking, I love this tribe. I felt like I found my tribe, and I love this tribe, and I am going to work hard at the following: have a short poem, have a long poem, have a funny poem, have a serious poem, have a joke ready, have something to say if I slip up and lose my memory. Scan the audience, whether you can see them or not, because you're often blinded by the lights.
Otherwise,
There's just a whole lot of stagecraft that I have learned over the years, um, including this, that the biggest gift to myself was years ago being so nervous before a show and finally saying to myself, not to make a bad joke here, but if the brain surgeon or the pilot in the sky has a bad day, that is really serious. If the cowboy poet up on stage reciting a poem has a bad day, what the heck is the worst thing there? My pride is a little bit hurt. The audience is going to clap and cheer and encourage you on. So that was a big gift to myself to finally start enjoying the stage time. Go out and have fun. Be prepared. There's nobody more prepared than me. And then go out and have fun.
and in addition to your spoken word poetry, you are also an author, and you
Right.
have a latest collection
Mm-hmm.
called Lucky Me. Tell us
Right.
about that collection.
Well, your listeners will know that writing is a very solitary, unless you're a collaborator, but for me, writing is the solitary event. How rich then to have the collaborative joy or the community event of a group of people who want to talk about writing. And that's what we have in our town. Through cowboy poetry, I've been many places, including the Monterey Cowboy Festival. I was invited there several times and met a wonderful couple who are interested in poetry, especially haiku poetry.
Mm.
Well, what do I know about haiku? I'm a complete beginner, but it was our love of words that now we have now we have a new friendship. Well, Neil came up to visit Western Canada, stayed with me, and because he was in town, I invited some friends over to have blueberry bundt cake and sit on the patio and talk about poetry. And he especially kind of led our discussion, and people loved it. And so, even though Neil went home to California, our poetry group has been meeting every month now for 12 years. And because I'm the leader, even though not every poem I write is a barn burner, I do discipline myself to write something every month. So I send out the prompts. It could be clothes hanging on a clothesline, or a grandpa and a child walking down a long road, or two women of a certain age having a laugh in a cafe window. Whatever is a picture that I send out is a prompt. Sometimes we write in response to the news. Sometimes we challenge ourselves to write a 100-word poem, but we are a group of more or less 9 to 10 to 12 people, and we meet every month. And I have saved every poem I've ever written for that group, and I polished them up, selected what I think are the best, and that's my new collection. So it's me, Doris Daley, cowboy poet, sharing with you my life that isn't locked and loaded into a cowboy poetry rhyme scheme and meter, or even the lingo of cowboy poetry. It's here's an example. I had a dear aunt, my mom's sister. She had MS, and she was bedridden for many, many years. And when I visited her one time and said, "Oh gosh, Marlis, look at the time. I have to get to the post office before it closes, and I have to drop this package off at my mom's house, and I have to get to the library at 8 o'clock. So I better go." And she said, "Doris, you don't have to do any of those things. You get to do those things." So that has never left me. And that will never get into a cowboy poem, but it's a poem. It's a little moment of life. So this book is about romance and envy and tomatoes and Zorro and relationships and corn on the cob and marching bands and the whole gamut of life.
Well, I really like the fact that you don't box yourself in, that you and your friends expand your world to include not just cowboy poetry, but all kinds of ways of expressing how you live
Well,
in this world.
I love cowboy poetry, and I love the life it's brought, and I've ridden a certain wave of cowboy poetry at its heyday. Yay. But it is such a relief not to write rhymed and metered. I'm not saying I don't like rhymed and metered. I'm saying there's a whole world out there that
It
I
really is.
want to write about in styles that interest me. And so it's such a relief for me to get away from the rhymed and metered cadence of cowboy poetry.
Well, and I was able to interview Michael Dylan Welch, who is the guru of haiku poetry. So if you
Oh, oh,
so
oh.
if you don't know him, check him out because he can give you so many amazing teachable things about how to do haikus, which I struggle even to this day myself. Um, Doris, tell us about like when you are writing and you have do you have like a set time you do it? Like what is your writing
No.
style?
Desperation is my writing style. That's not it sounds funny, but
No.
next Thursday is our poetry group. And so by golly, between now and so a deadline is, I don't know about the rest of your writers. This is my reality. I don't like to write, but I love the feeling of having written at the end of the day. And I don't dislike writing. But it's hard. It doesn't come as a muse. It doesn't just flow from my fingers. I fight for every line. It's I'm not a quilter, but in the same way that a quilter can't just slap it together,
Mhm.
there's a lot of detail and time and skill there. And at the end of the day, or at the end of the project, you have a beautiful quilt. It's the same with me. It's a lot of effort for me to write a poem, and the best feeling is when it's all over with.
I can relate to that. In fact, one of the things that people have trouble with is like writer's block, or there's something that's stopping that
Mm-hmm.
flow of words, and so they have to work very hard to be able to overcome that. So when you are experiencing that lack of flow, what do you do? How do you handle it?
There's a part of me that doesn't believe in writer's block. In other words, in my history, for me, it's discipline. Um, if I feel like writing or I don't feel like writing, if I've got a show coming up next week, I have to do something. I have to do something new. And by now, I've been invited back to so many venues that I need to keep writing something new, so my audiences have something new to listen to. So, um, I keep a little envelope of ideas. I keep a little envelope of creative phrases or words or expressions that I've maybe overheard at a coffee shop, or a pun that accidentally was the result of a conversation. So sometimes the language itself will give me the idea, but mostly it's another thing that inspires me, that helps me a lot, is to go to other live performances, to go to a coffee shop or a live music, a house concert, a singer songwriter where the craftsmanship and the lyrics is really strong. I love those small concerts, because I just wrote a piece about having a dream, and it was only because I went to a house concert where the singer songwriter said, "Don't know why I dreamt about Ernest Hemingway. What would happen if I met Ernest Hemingway in the next life?" Well, that's certainly not a poem I want to write, a song I want to write, but it made me think, oh gosh, what if I met Matt Dillon or Ben Cartwright or Roy Rogers in my next life? So other people's creativity, I think, makes me a better writer and gives me some of my ideas.
Well, Doris, will you read some of your work for us today?
I would be delighted to. I'll recite it probably. I've got my finger in my book, just so you know, I'm one of those cowboy poets who knows how to read. um, well, here's the poem. It's a Western poem. It's one of my cowboy poetry poems, and it's about being up in the high country west of where I live now. Bunch of gals were there for the weekend, all of us women friends. Beautiful time on horseback, beautiful food, smoke going straight up, no wind. And here's what inspired this poem, me being a good eavesdropper. Two sisters were along, and they had a colorful way of describing things. So at this camp, there's a string of wire around the whole camp to keep the bears out. The biffy is an outhouse on the other side of the cook shack. So it is kind of funny then when one gal says, "Oh, one more trip to the ensuite," and then it's time to turn in. Well, the ensuite is pretty rustic over there on the other side of the cook shack. And on our last night in camp, smoke was going up into the heavens and the stars were sparkling. And she looked way up into the sky and she said, "Oh, look at that. Aren't we lucky? I feel sorry for all the rich folks tonight who are at a 5-star resort, because look at us." She looked up into the heavens. "We're here at a 1,000,000-star resort." So that's a gift that was a gift to me, and it would be a gift to any singer songwriter. So here's what I wrote. "A 5-star commendation," said the Duke of La Di Da. "To stay in less would simply be unthinkable, n'est-ce pas? Valet parking, chandeliers, and $1,000,000 view. Security must be discreet. The fixtures must be new." "Oh, exclusive and deluxe," agreed the nabob of Bel Air. "Marble tiles in the ensuite, Persian rugs upon the stair. The sheets must be 800 count. The Duchess needs her spa. And by the bed, a basket of champagne and caviar." Well, to each his own, I figure. Every kettle has a lid, but a fancy 5-star penthouse isn't even on my grid. A suite at Hotel Hoity-Toit just doesn't like my lamp, because nothing holds a candle to a Skookum Mountain camp, where the rooms are made of canvas with a nifty zippered door. A scattering of mud and needles decorate the floor. The coffee is outstanding. The cuisine is simply great. When you're hungry, beans and bacon are perfection on your plate. The dimensions of the ensuite are modest, it is true. But when you're sitting sweetly on it, it's a $1,000,000,000 view. Marble is redundant at the best seat on the planet. It's a rocky mountain vista that we never take for granted. The help is sometimes stuffy, but tough as mountain goats. All it takes to keep him happy is a morning feed of oats. And security is peerless at our little mountain den. The dog will bark when bears come close, 9 times out of 10. And when the sun begins to melt behind the western rim, when a choir of coyotes sings its wild soprano hymn. The fire crackles brightly, the stars are all at play, and our little camp is sparkling beneath the Milky Way. Then I think about the rich folk, those dukes and bon vivants, dressed up in silk and satin in their measly 5-star haunts. 999,995 short to come close to what I have here at my 1,000,000-star resort.
That was wonderful. I love that.
Thank you. I'll do the poem. Let me find it. About my aunt, the one that was bedridden. So I think the prompt, well, it doesn't matter what the prompt was. I remember that the month I sent this picture out, it was a curtain fluttering, looking through a window, and a curtain was fluttering, and you were looking outside to see something. Mm-hmm. It's called Looking Out the Window on a Drizzly Morning. The best part of waking up was never Folgers in her cup. Rather, as each new morning unfurled, the first order of business was to fling open the drapes and greet the world. With wind screaming or sun beaming, frost clinging or meadowlark singing, 30 above or 30 below, there was the world shouting hello. No rooster or alarm clock necessary. Those curtain rods sang out at 7:30 every morning. Was she that punctual? That habitual? If only. The daytime shift began at 7. The caregivers needed half an hour to fill out the charts, stock the cart, grab fresh sheets. At 7:30, they arrived in her room, cranked her up into a sitting position, opened the drapes. Only then could she see out the window, and that went on for 18 years. I think of my Aunt Marlis on a drizzly day when I look out my window and say, I don't feel like going out today. Mm-hmm. Thank you. And here's one more. I wrote, who knew, I didn't know, but who knew that I stumbled into the world of acrostics, where you take the name of an idea, write it on the left-hand page, and then fill in the lines. I love acrostics, and I didn't know that about myself. But boy, what a nice scaffolding. If I'm stumped, I don't know what I'm going to write for next Thursday, because the prompt is nice, woolly, thick socks. I don't have any ideas yet. But when you write a word on the left-hand column of the page, sometimes, for me, sometimes that is my best prompt. So this one's called Good Therapy, and it's spelled out Goodt. So girlfriends go up. Let's start again. Girlfriends grow up and become old friends. Old friends grow closer and occupy each other's skin. Life and death, marriage, divorce, babies, money, 10 pounds here, a couple of husbands there. Eventually, you figure out that strawberry rhubarb pie and strong coffee are way cheaper than a psychiatrist, and in the long run, yield better results.
I love that. And I'm a big fan of acrostic poetry myself.
Oh, yay. Well, there's a cleverness. Well, so as you know, the acrostic is one thing. There's a bit of cleverness there, but it also has to be a good poem. You have to use some craftsmanship, some wordsmithing as you write the piece.
Yeah, it can't be all disjointed and not make any sense. It kind of has to flow. And yours really did. It was wonderful.
Oh, thanks. Well, go ahead.
One of the things that I love about you is that you have a really beautiful website.
Oh, thank you.
And so I was going to ask you, because some of our writers don't have a website set up. Do you know how you did that? And how do you maintain your website to keep it new?
You have a husband who does that for you and enjoys it. I'm a Luddite, hopeless, not proud of myself when I say I don't even care about all that stuff, but I don't. And yet because I try to make part of my income as a writer and certainly as a performer of Western poetry. By golly, my website has brought me many, many jobs, and people Google um, cowboy poets coming to Texas, and my website pops up, and I've gotten jobs that way. People find me through my
Mhm.
website. Oh, Doris Daley, yeah, I heard her 3 years ago in California. I wonder if she could come to Oregon to do my show or Kamloops, and so they find me through the website. So for me, it's been really helpful. And I will say that I do update my website at least with every solstice, twice a year.
So, do you find that when you are, because you're, it sounds like you're an incredibly busy person.
Well,
But
I'm
how do
only
you,
me. Yeah.
but like, how do you find time to relax? Like, what is your idea of the perfect day for you?
Yesterday was it because I went with my hiking group. We snowshoed to the top of a mountain, Coyote Hills, and that's a great day for me, um, Becky, because I'm not leading it, directing it. I'm not looking at my phone like everybody else is, and I'm not dissing them, but they're mapping all trails and they're figuring out on their phones where the hike is taking. I don't do any of that. I just show up and follow. And that's a great, it cleans my brain. And um, if I'm not doing that, I'm getting out the mix master and some butter and brown sugar. And I'm a happy baker. I play music. So I'm busier than some, not as busy as many, and I'm a reader. I would also say if anything feeds my writing life, it's my reading life. I bet that's true. I often lead a little. I often lead a writing workshop when I go to a cowboy poetry event. Will you lead it? Will you teach? Will you lead a workshop? Yes, my hand goes up. And so I have hints and I've got notes and I know what makes a poor rhymed and metered verse and I know what makes a good one. And so I've collected all of that stuff. But one of the questions I ask right off the top is who are your favorite? What poetry are you reading these days? And if you aren't reading poetry, what books are you reading these days? And boy, oh boy, I'm always surprised that people who take a writing workshop many times they have trouble coming up with the name of an author. They aren't. Some are, but many are not readers. And boy, I don't know how you can be a good writer if you're not a good reader.
I think a lot of people struggle with that because maybe they're afraid that their work, if they're reading someone else's work, that they're going to slowly adapt that person's writing style. But really, it's the opposite. You kind of identify your writing style that way.
Yes, and you just open your world up to first person or past tense or an Irish village or a gentleman in Moscow or puns or I just think you have to love if you love you have to love the language to be a writer. So read good books.
I think that's perfect advice. Well, I tell you, Doris, it's been a pleasure getting to meet with you today. Thank you so much for what you do in the world of writing and
I
public
can't
speaking.
tell. Oh, it's been a ball for me. I love talking. As I said, writing can be a solitary thing. So to talk about writing with people who love writing, that's a great gift to me. Thank you very much.
I wanted to make sure that everyone knows where your website is before we leave.
Okay.
Tell us about that, where we can find you.
DorisDaley.com. DorisDaley.
And on the website, it includes your information that where people can purchase
Mm-hmm.
your products.
Yep.
And for those of you who don't know, she even has CDs on there, so you can purchase those.
Great.
But it also tells your schedule, even up until the new year, I believe. So we hope that your days will be filled with lots of good things next year.
Oh, I do too. Thank you for those good wishes. What a treat to speak with you.
Thank you.